Have you ever noticed that what you practice, you seem to get really good at? Like the more you practice it, the better you get? Have you ever considered that perhaps, this practice that you're doing is actually pointed in the wrong direction? I want to talk about this idea of what we practice, we become. And, I think there's all kinds of ways that you could see this coming out in your life, in your experience, whether that's from your attitude, whether that is your eating habits or your relationship habits, but whatever you're practicing, you're definitely getting better at it. But are you practicing in the right direction for you? Maybe that's something that you might need to consider. Is it something that is working for me? Or is it something that is actually working against me? The one thing that when we are practicing, if you think about this, we're actually being really consistent with that practice, aren't we? It's that consistency that keeps things going. And, it's a very powerful thing, consistency. And we must make sure that we're pointing it in the right direction. We are going to talk about that. And I think it's a really, really important topic for us to speak about because we often don't think about the things that we're practicing every day. We could be practicing being upset. We could be practicing, what else could we be practicing? Finding the negative. That's something a lot of people practice and they get really good at it as well. What you need to consider is what it is that you are practicing. So let's look at this. Our habits, whether they be good or bad, are just repetitions of action. Just things that you've practiced over and over again. And because you're practicing those things, you are finding yourself creating these cycles or patterns of behavior that you can't seem to get out of. And, often we're not really aware, apart from the fact that we don't like the experience, we're not really aware that this is what we're doing. It's because we are being consistent in that particular behavior. Our habits form our daily actions. So just think about that one for a minute. Just think about all the things that you do during the day and the repetitive things that you do. Think about the thoughts that you have. Are they repetitive thoughts? And in what direction are they traveling? Are those thoughts actually mean thoughts or are they thoughts of positivity? Like what kind of thinking do you have? Is it fearful thinking perhaps? What kind of thinking are you getting involved in and taking up as a habit? Because this is what you're doing. So let's consider what are the things that are not working in our life. Just consider for a moment, what are the things that are not working? And it might be that, it could be your finances, it could be your relationship, it could be your career, it could be anything that's not working. But just think about for a minute, what is not working for you? Have you got it? Have you got the thing that's not working? Now, ask yourself, how much energy and time do you put into thinking about this thing or repeating the habit that you're actually wanting to get out of? How much time do you put in? How much effort? I'm sure it's quite a bit, even though you don't want it. And I'm sure that you're putting in a lot of effort. It's the repetition that is happening here, and it's either empowering you or it's disempowering you. So let us sort of think about that. If it is an empowering thing, well then fine, leave it there, that's great. But if it's not, how can you transform it into an empowering thing, depending upon what that is for you. I think what we need to do is to stop really thinking about this idea that we need instant gratification. We want things to happen quickly, don't we? We want the good stuff to happen quickly, that's for sure. I'm sure you're on my side with that one. I'm sure we all do want that. But I think we live in a world now that, demands performance, and we do get used to being able to just flick our phones and look at Google and get the answers and have things done yesterday. It's almost expected in a way, isn't it? I think it's putting a lot of pressure on us, and often it's very, very unreasonable. What you've got to realize is that habits will take you further than desires. Yes, just because you desire to be happy, it doesn't mean you're going to go in that direction. It probably means, if you're not happy, that you've got some really bad habits. So you might need to start to consider, what do I need to change? If habits are stronger than desires, then we need to look at the quality of the habits and we need to transform those. The best way to get rid of a habit is to replace it with another one. That is the best way. In fact, I think it's probably the only way. As humans, we are really incredibly habitual creatures. And I think this is just simply our nature. We do something, repeat it again, it becomes programmed. So what we need to do, if we've got some bad habits, we simply need to turn it around and replace them with some good ones. And it can be really quite subtle and quite gentle to begin with. You don't have to upheaval every aspect of yourself. You could just start in one or two areas. And it might be, let's say for instance, it's your mind. And you might think, well, look, I'm very fearful. I'm feeling very afraid all of the time. Just, are you in a habit of telling yourself bad stories? Is that something that you're doing? Are you worrying a lot? Do you have a habit of worrying? Because that will do it. If that's the case, then what you need to do is make a habit of reassuring yourself. It's like you've got to go to the opposite and just make a habit. Every time that habit comes in where, you're being fearful or worrying, you need to jump in with something reassuring and do that really, really quickly, or at least as quick as you can. And that will, in time, turn that habit around. And before you know it, you'll be taking up that good habit rather than just running the reels on the bad one. It does require effort. It certainly does. You've got to put the effort in, but I guarantee you it is worth it. It is something that is really worth your effort here. Aristotle, who was a philosopher, said that the statement that he made was, we are what we repeatedly do. So excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Because if we are what we repeatedly do, think about that. If we are what we repeatedly do, who are you? Who are you? Because you can look to your habits to see who you have become. People often say to me, I don't have the life that I want. I don't look the way that I want to look. I don't feel healthy. There's a myriad of things that people will be dissatisfied with. And I'll say to them, okay, we need to look at what your habits are. What are your habits? You say that, you want to move in the right direction, but then your behavior doesn't support that. So your habits are not aligned with where you want to go. So we have to choose a direction, and we really do need to think very carefully about that direction and what it will take for us to actually transform these bad habits that we have. So much of our environment influences the way that we feel, and certainly the way in which we respond. You know, a lot of our habitual responses are there, aren't they? The button gets pushed and out it comes. I'm sure you know what I'm saying. We need to decide whether this is working for us. And, you know, if it's not working for us, then we could perhaps choose a different response. We could think about creating another habit, something a little bit different to what it is that our habitual response to that person is. So that's something that we could definitely try. I think if we keep heading towards the right direction with ourselves, and we keep doing that, and we keep ourselves focused on heading into the right direction, eventually we'll actually be going down that pathway. What does it take to head us in the right direction? You know, what will it take? Well, I think it's going to take some patience. I think you're going to have to be really patient. And, you know, you didn't get this far like yesterday. It's taken you many years, it's taken you many repetitions to get you to this point. So I think that you're going to have to be a little bit patient, because it's going to take you a little bit to turn this around. You know, I often will think about the idea of a huge ocean liner, you know, having to turn around. And there's a friend of mine actually who often refers to turning the ship around. And what that means is that, you know, it sometimes takes a little bit of time. You know, the captain can say, I want to turn the ship around, but it takes a little bit of time for the ship to actually turn around, because it has to really, it kind of keeps heading in the same direction for a little bit, even though it's decided to change course. So I think this is something that you need to be aware of, that you've decided to change this, but you still could keep heading in that direction for a little bit until it's quite obvious that the ship has turned around and you are heading and charting a new direction. So hang in there, okay? Patience. So we need to focus our efforts in one direction, definitely. But you know, the problem is that we give up because we become impatient. You know, if we haven't got the body we want by the end of the week, then, you know, that packet of potato chips is looking really good. You know, I think you've got to kind of make this decision. You know, if health is what you want, then you need to be focused on health, and your habits need to be healthy. So that's something that you decide whether it's right for you or not. Another thing I think that you should be aware of is your beliefs. Are your beliefs supporting you? Do you believe in yourself? Do you believe that, you know, in what you're doing? You know, if you don't believe in what you're doing, then it's going to be very difficult for you to really practice consistency. To be able to sustain anything is going to be difficult. So really choosing to believe in yourself. And even if you don't quite believe right at this very point in time, just give yourself the opportunity to begin to establish that relationship with yourself and that self-belief. It may take a little time, but once again, if you stick at it and you practice it, it's going to happen. You are what you practice. You definitely are. And depending on the quality of that practice and the attention that you give to it, that will determine your outcome, whether it's favorable for you or not. How much do you value this thing that you want to transform? Is it really valuable to you? Is it worth your efforts? You know, because what does it mean to you? Because if it doesn't mean anything to you, you're not going to make it happen. It'll be 10 times tougher to make it happen. So it really needs to mean something to you. I think if you just keep it simple, the more frequently you perform an action, the more progress I think you're going to make. If you can be consistent in those actions, the consistency itself produces a successful result. Now, when I say successful, yes, you could be being consistent with something negative and you'll be successful at that too. People don't often think that of that as success, but it actually is, because you've got the outcome that you've put in for. So really consider your outcome and, really kind of be aware of what actions that you're taking as you move along. I guess the thing is to choose a goal. I want to become whatever. I want to become more peaceful. I want to become more healthy. I want to become whatever it is that you want to become. Choose what you want to become. And then practice becoming that. Just simply practice becoming that. And there's nothing faking about this. It's not fake until you make it or any of those things. It is actually practicing really tangible habits, whether that be, if it's health you're after, whether that be healthy eating, whether that be healthy exercise or having a healthy mind, healthy emotions, whatever it is, practice habitual ways of being that are going to produce that outcome. I think, when you focus on the process rather than the outcome, I think that is really useful as well. A lot of people will say, I want to lose 10K by the end of the month or whatever it might be. And they focus on that outcome. I'm losing 10K, I'm losing 10K, I'm losing 10K. Now, they may, because of their consistency of thinking, they may get to that. But often what happens is they put the weight back on very quickly because they've lost that drive of energy that's going towards that particular thought. So the idea is not to be outcomes based. You can have an outcome in your mind that, yes, I'd be lovely to lose some weight, but I think the thing is to fall in love with the process of it. So to really enjoy eating well, to really enjoy becoming creative with your cooking, enjoy exercise, find something that you enjoy. Don't do things that you dislike. It creates a really bad energy and that's not good for you. You won't be able to sustain it. So try and find something that you enjoy. If it's walking or running or aerobics or bike riding, whatever it is that you enjoy, go and do that. Now you might say, I don't enjoy any exercise. Okay, well don't look at it as exercise. Why don't you go for a walk to the park and see if you can, listen to some birds or go and collect things. It might be something that you decide to do, an activity. Make it really enjoyable so that you'll stay with it. We've got to kind of change our attitude towards this. If we really want to make this work, we need to change our attitude. It might be that you set, a time and a place to do this. It might be every morning before breakfast, I get up and I go for a walk. Or it might be after dinner, it's my intention to sit down and meditate, or, whatever it is for you. But, setting an intention is actually a really powerful way to stay with that consistency. So, the problem that I find with most people when I'm listening to them and the challenges that they're having when it comes to being consistent is the fact that what they do, instead of being consistent or consisting, they actually contradict themselves. So they're living contradiction. So even though they say they want to get healthy or they want to improve in a particular way, their actions, thoughts, the way in which they feel are all contradictory to health. So they'll sit there and they'll complain, about how miserable they feel. And all of this is just a contradiction. You cannot create a positive life if you are complaining. You cannot do that. I don't know of anyone who's managed to do that. So the complaining has to go. The complaining has to go. That's something you have to leave behind. And if you've been practicing complaining, it's time for you to give that up. That's not going to work for you. It doesn't matter when or where, it isn't going to work, okay? So I think it's time to let go of that one. When we do contradict ourselves, we negate any effort that we have put in. It just wipes it out. So we really want to stay focused on this idea of consistency, of practice. And, we don't get it perfect, do we, when we practice? Think about it. You don't. It's not about being perfect. It's just simply about practicing to build skill. And if you focus on that you're just going to build your skills up and you're going to find yourself in a better position than you are now. That I know for sure. I know that for sure. So it's a matter of you just simply allowing yourself to be consistent and consistently practice. And practice those habits that you want to really become. So all the habits that you want to become, practice those ones. They're the ones to practice. So if you think about it, contradictions, they, in a way, they kind of allow for us to discover. They allow for us to discover the beliefs that are, getting in our way of achieving what we want to achieve. So that could be a good thing. So you don't have to beat up on yourself because you have contradictions. You can really look at them and you can say to yourself, okay, I could actually really use this to my advantage. What is it that I am believing here? Why do I pick up this habit? Why is that? And your contradictions, they almost give you a window of opportunity. They show you where the work needs to be done. And that's really powerful. That's incredibly powerful. Consistency develops routine and it actually builds momentum. It's kind of like the more you do it, the more of a routine you get into. And then, of course, it just has a momentum all of its own. And it forms, it allows you to form habits that become second nature. Things that you're not conscious of, you don't think of, you just naturally do. I'm sure that you're perhaps doing some bad ones at the moment that you might think, oh, that's not really working for me. Deliberately transforming a habit. Deliberately changing a bad one to a good one and practicing that until that becomes second nature. The shift from deliberate to natural, to it being actually natural, is really powerful and it is incredibly transformational. You want to give it a go. It's really good. Really good. Don't always look for the easy way out. There's something called the law of effort. Anything worth having, you need to put effort into. So if you want to be a person who is worthwhile, a person who you feel good about, you're going to have to put in the effort. You're going to have to do that. because you've probably got a lot of bad habits there that are getting in your way. But the good news is that they don't have to stop you. They really don't have to stop you. Let's consider that. They don't. Just make a start. Just make a start. That's all you need to do. If something's not working, just ask yourself, have I been consistently giving it the appropriate attention, energy, and time? Ask yourself that question and answer it honestly. Have you? Look at your life. You'll be able to see what you've given yourself to, what you've been consistent with by the results that you have in your life. And you may be happy with that. It may be fine. But if you're not, then now is the time for you to transform that. It's now. You don't have to aim for 100%, you know. As I said, we don't have to be perfect. It's not about being perfect. No one's perfect. You can't be. But if you could be consistent and you could aim for, say, about 90%? If you could aim 90% of the time to be consistent with the good habits that you want to take up, you will change your life. You will. You will change your life. Think about that. It's enticing, isn't it? It's very enticing. Problem is that most of the actions that we take, we think they're actions, but they're not. They're reactions, actually. They're not really actions. You're just reacting. When we make a conscious action, you know, and to decide in that moment of what it is that we are going to do or how we're going to meet something, then that is being proactive. That is using our responsibility. But most people are out there just simply reacting, doing the things that they did the day before and repeating those. How much of your life is a repetition? How much of it is conscious? That's something to think about. Do you just do all the time? Or do you allow yourself to break it up and respond and decide to do something different? Decide to meet something differently? Just remember, whatever you are consistently practicing is what you are becoming. I think it's a great thing to remember. So if you're practicing being negative, you're going to be negative. You're going to be negative. There is no doubt about it. If you're practicing being worried, you're going to worry. That's just how it works. So let's change that. Let's change it. Let's decide today to change that. And let's move forward differently. And remember what I said about the ship. It takes a little while for an ocean liner to turn around. It's quite a few kilometers actually, or nautical miles, that it has to travel in order to turn around, even after the captain has decided. And it might take you a little bit to turn your ship around, but if that's what you want to do, you will definitely do it. And I encourage you to do it. It is definitely worth your effort. I really, really hope that you've taken away something. You can move forward in a consistent way and practice being the best part of you. Just practice doing it. Fall in love with the process. It really is a lot of fun. Just practice and you'll be amazed at where you will arrive. Absolutely amazed.